Hi, I'm Ahava Leibtag. Today I'm joined by my good friend, Theresa Lockemy, founder and CEO at Inner Path Digital, to talk about scalable digital marketing and more. You've got questions, we've got answers. Let's jump into it. Thank you for being here, Theresa.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
We are recording this the second week of January 2026. What are you most excited about for this year?
I think I'm most excited about healthcare being pushed to continue to mature in a good way, right? Expectations continue to grow. Teams can't just run campaigns anymore, right? We have to connect the full journey. And in order to connect the full journey, we also have to push our teams to be able to work across the aisle, to be able to work departmentally, to be able to have a vision that we have our IT teams, our marketing team, clinical ops are aligned on. So I think that because of the shifts in consumer expectations and the shifts in technology platforms and evolving to try to be more for patient prospect, et cetera, that it's going to push the teams and people to come together in a way that's still very much needed.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of COVID without the pressure of a
Yes.
pandemic.
Yes,
I
100%.
that energy of like we have to work together and we have to solve these problems without being Game of Thrones about it is very exciting. I think one of the things that I've learned from the other thought leaders in the space that I've talked to, like you, is that this has to transform and we should be excited because we're finally going to get to a space where we are going to be able to have end-to-end attribution and we're going to be able to really understand the consumer buying journey. I think it's exciting. I just wrote an email about ChatGPT and Anthropic's new, Claude for healthcare product. And I said, you can freak out about this, or you can say, this is really exciting. What do I need to do to be ready
Yep.
for this and to
Yep.
prepare my content and my website to be the single source of truth? So I do. I love that. I love what you're saying about the back end that a lot of people don't think about, which is that the front end and the way that it's moving is forcing the people and the talent to think differently about how they come together. Let's hope that really sticks. We saw we could do it in COVID, and then
Yeah.
everybody gave it up.
COVID's such a great example. That time period is one that I still refer back to in my mind of a time where people were truly coming together and working together in an integrated way.
What strategies should healthcare marketers focus on right now to meet people where they are and guide them to the next step?
We know search is fragmented. People are discovering information in many places, right? Not just Google. I think websites still matter. I don't think they're dead. I don't think they're going away, but they're part of a system. So I think the focus goes back to some fundamentals, being able to answer the questions that people are asking in plain language, treating findability and search also as a system holistically, right? Like across content SEO, provider data, listings, AI. AI is the flashy new thing, right? But it's just another piece of search and looking at that holistically.
Do you think search is fragmented or do you think people's behavior is fragmented?
Can it be both? So I think because search and the way that people can discover information is fragmented, it's enabling already ADD fragmented types of behaviors that I think we've grown over time.
Let's look at the output rather than the input. Findability is fragmented. Doesn't really matter if search is fragmented because
Yeah,
people are just going to go either into
ex-
Google or an LLM or into the search bar of
exactly.
whatever
Yes.
app they're in.
Yes.
But findability is fragmented. That's a really fascinating thing to write about. Because maybe, I think maybe like we're thinking about it all wrong. When you say search is fragmented, I agree with you 100%. But
Yes.
it's not the search itself that's fragmented. If you said to the average person, what do you do when you're looking for a healthcare provider? They'd be like, I go to Google. They wouldn't tell you I go to TikTok. Okay, maybe like elements of Gen Z would, but I don't necessarily know that if they were actually
Yeah.
looking for a doctor, they would do that. It would be a really interesting thing to explore because I think from my point of view, what I see is that everyone's trying to be everywhere all at once. And I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is that show up in the place that they are the way you want them to see them in that place, but rely on the fact that major search is going to come of two
Yeah.
ways, either an LLM or Google.
Yes. And I think that goes back to the fundamentals to a degree, right? Answering the questions that people have in a way that is going to resonate and meet their needs, wherever that's going to surface, and making sure that you're accounting for the fact that could surface in a more fragmented way, that it may not be in full
Yes.
context.
That's a phenomenal point because you're not, the search engines are actually giving you fragmented results because they're
Exactly.
sending you to all
Yeah.
these different channels. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I think we could just say search is fragmented.
Did we just do a full circle?
I love a full circle moment. I do think it's interesting to think that through because in my job, I'm constantly trying to parse out what is really the problem. Because if we solve for Y, X isn't going to get solved. And sometimes I think the problem is we're trying to solve search, but actually, what I really think we're trying to solve is information. And that's where it
Yeah.
becomes like an interesting thing to debate the semantics of because it does speak to human behaviors. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we're really trying to get at.
Yeah.
Many teams struggle to balance brand building with short term growth. How can
Yeah.
marketing leaders find that balance and gain internal buy in?
Yeah, this is a real tension. I don't think the solution obviously is choosing one. Maybe just to define brand really quick. So I don't define brand as an identity or as a visual color scheme or as it's an experience. You're experiencing the brand,
A
right? So
personality.
exactly, right? So everything in my mind ladders up that you do. The campaigns, the short-term growth, the community work. Now, yes, you may have focused efforts on your brand or a brand refresh, or a lot of health systems are growing and they're having to rethink their brand. But I think treating it as a portfolio, so having your brand pillars and then your content pillars, and all of that should roll up. I think it's treating it as a system, as a portfolio of work, and having focused efforts, obviously, where you need to, that outline clear goals and objectives and who are the team members that are focusing on those. I think the only time that it winds up being where you're feeling like you have to choose is when you're,
Your subject matter experts demand it.
yes, demand it, but also you're responding and then you wind up responding in a tactical way versus strategically connecting the pieces together. But I think you can do short-term work and that align with the brand, I guess. Like to me, they're not two different
Yeah.
things.
What we often see is like we want to run a campaign or we want to do this service line, but we want it to be a little bit different because XYZ reason. And we're like, how does this fit into your overall strategy for satisfying somebody at the top?
Yes.
Or
Point.
this is
Yeah.
outside a little bit of our core business expertise, but we want to do it because of X, Y, and Z. And I don't know that they're sacrificing brand as much as they're not sticking within the parameters of what the brand architects wanted them to stick within.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder, does it really matter? Like, is a woman or a man with stage 4 breast cancer actually going to go look at your dentistry section and those two things feel a little bit different? Are they coming from the same brand? I don't
Yeah.
know. I wonder often if that's even a worry that we should really have.
I feel like experience is created in those micro moments, if you will, right? So that is what someone's going to walk away with, what they experienced in that moment. To your point, not necessarily, oh, I came back 3 months later and I'm looking at this other area and this isn't cohesive with this.
I have many, many reports from friends who have gone to the same exact hospital for different things and had a completely different in person experience. Forget about a digital experience.
That is critical.
I do think marketers struggle with this all the time. No matter how great we make the online experience or the offline experience that we can control, operationally, we can't really make the difference that we want to make. And I think that there are some marketers who have figured out ways to do that.
Yes. That's where the cross-functional work's so needed. That goes back to what we were talking about at the top of how are teams coming together to really improve the experience, because you cannot create a connected experience if the teams are operating in silos.
Exactly. Let's talk about the experience that a person is going through at their individual level. They don't care about
Exactly.
your brand.
Same. That's why I started with let's define brand. And I know I have blind spots here because my experience has been more on digital programs that are creating and helping to support experiences. So that's what I connect to brand because that's where my experience lives. But I honestly have never fully understood the identity, the visual, everything having to be buttoned up in that way. It's never fully resonated with me. I know I had blind spots though, because I'm not a brand
Yeah.
person.
So that part of it, I understand. I don't understand how that's like breathed into the content, so to speak, because it's like when we're showing you the labor and delivery rooms and we're visualizing those for you in photographs and all that,
Yeah.
then we should be doing that in the cancer rooms also. But at the
Yes.
end of the day, to a labor and delivery, to a mother, an expectant parent, that is
Yeah.
far more important maybe than what the hospital room looks after recovery from cancer surgery.
Yes.
So that's where I feel like we're getting lost in the experience that each patient feels rather than the experience of the brand.
That makes a ton of sense. Yes.
You've worked on both the provider and service provider sides. What's something you learned that you wish you had known when you were in hospital marketing?
That not everything's urgent. A lot of churn just comes from unclear priorities, unclear structure, unclear ways of working, and that there's a lot that can be improved to help remove urgency. But even when things aren't operating the way that they should, not everything is urgent. Feels like when you're on the provider side. Like I will say in my role now, at times I feel like I start to go into that mode of I'm back on the provider. I'm like, oh my God, I got to do that. The grace that I feel like I'm provided by the organizations I work with, it's so surprising to me because it's so different from the way that I felt when I was on the ground. There's just something interesting in that dynamic that I think should be looked more closely at in identifying why is it we feel like there's so many things coming at us. And not to have a plug for like my type of role and the support that I provide, but I really do wish that I had someone like me when I was on the provider side to help
Yeah.
around and to help provide perspective, because it's really hard to zoom out when you're
Yes.
like in it.
Yes. First of all, that's why people go to strategic consultants because they want somebody who's seen this 1,000 times to tell them you're just 1,001.
Yes.
Don't feel like you're
Yes.
sitting out there on your own. Let me
Yeah.
talk to you about how I've structured other solutions and let's find the one that's right for you, whether it's an a la carte solution or just a basic, here's what we've done in the past.
Yes.
However, I think you said something really important about the frenzy and the freneticism that I have found for hospital marketers. And I will tell you that I think it comes when you're in those buildings. Everyone is rushing around trying to save patients' lives.
True. So you think that comes culturally from the clinical
I
side?
do. I do.
And
I do.
interesting.
Absolutely. I personally think that a lot of the pressure and pain that hospital marketers feel comes from a lack of understanding on the executive side, particularly the clinical executive side of what marketing really does.
That's such a great point, though, that you make, that it's the urgency that's coming right from everywhere, but where that urgency comes from, the mindset, the culture was a really interesting
Yeah,
connection.
I'm going to say something pretty bold here, but I think you can know everything about a culture that you need to know by where the fear comes from. So if you get an email from somebody and you're afraid, that's where the culture is coming from. It's not coming from the places that you feel good. It's coming
Yeah.
from the places that you're like, oh no,
Yeah.
I do not want to get an email from this person, or
Yeah.
I don't want the subject
Absolutely.
line to sound like they're mad. And that's where I have often found in many hospitals, particularly academic medical centers, where I felt like these doctors are running the show and the marketing people are struggling to get control.
Yes.
And that's where that pain comes from, I think.
And I think that even going back to what we were talking about before makes it harder for teams to come together because that pressure is coming to all functions, right? It's coming to IT, to ops, to marketing.
If you're always arguing about who's in charge, you can't really do great work. So this has been lovely. Where can people
Yes,
find you?
LinkedIn's perfect place to find me.
And what if people wanted to call you to have them be your best friend, hand holder, strategic consultant? What would they be looking for you to do?
Teams really thrive when I'm able to enter an environment where there's complexity, where there's transformation, to help be able to work through that. And a lot of where my experience lies, where I'm able to support, is in building these digital programs. So CRM, marketing automation, building strategic marketing plans and how is the team coming together to execute against them. I really enjoy doing, and I feel like should be the starting point of anything. I know it doesn't always work that way, but is really zooming out and doing an assessment and understanding where the team is at, where are the opportunities, so you really know where you can focus and where you can make movement quickly to be able to build momentum as well.
Thank you so much for joining me, friend. And thanks to our viewers for joining in. I hope you got the answer you were looking for today. If you have a burning question, put it in the comments or email it to ahava.leibtag@ahamediagroup.com. I'll see you next time.